Hi everybody, it's Peter Stockdale, the host of the Spin Market Report. Are you looking for a new place to advertise your business? With over 85,000 YouTube impressions and 20,000 total streams across all platforms in the last 12 months, the Spin Market Podcast Network could be the prime space you've been looking for to advertise your business. Get a hold of Spin Market today and see what advertising on a podcast can do for you. Visit www.spinmarketwith2ks.com or email digitalagent@spinmarket.com for more information.
It's the Spin Market Report. Here's your host, Peter Stockdale.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Spin Market Report. I'm sitting down with Shanelle Marquart today. Shanelle, you own Country Oven Home Bakery. So I looked on your Facebook page. I see you make amazing looking bread.
Yes.
So can I just, easy question for you right off the bat. Do you make things other than bread?
Yes.
All right. So let's just go through like a brief list of some of the things you make.
I make bread, cookies, bagels, scones, cinnamon rolls, pizza crust. I make a lot of variety of things.
Pizza crust. All right.
Dinner rolls.
Piqued my interest there with the pizza talk. I'll tell you what, I love me some pizzas. So what got you started into this? Like what got you interested in baking, or was it like bread stuff first, or like, I guess baking's primarily
I've been
bread?
Baking on and off pretty much all my life.
Okay.
And then, my grandma used to bake with us when we were kids.
Okay.
And I started baking sourdough probably about 2 years ago, just because sourdough's healthier for you in general.
Okay.
It's got a lot of gut healthy bacteria.
All right.
And it's fermented, so the breakdown process of the bread is already started for you.
Okay.
So it's a lot easier for your body to digest.
Is that like the big difference between sourdough and
Yes.
regular bread? Okay.
Yes.
I guess I didn't know.
Sourdough's a natural wild yeast versus like a commercial yeast.
Yes. Okay. So the crazy thing about that was I was like this morning, like researching bread. How long has bread been around? How did they first start making it and stuff, trying to prep for this? And I'll tell you what, it got me hungry for some bread. So what made this your passion? Was there something that just like sparked all of this that you were just like, oh, I maybe I'm good at this. Maybe I should try this. Or did your friends and family like, you have to start selling this?
Yeah, that's what it was. I started baking the bread, and then the biggest thing that I did was bread, and then I started making chocolate chip cookies.
Ooh.
And everybody was like, oh my God, your chocolate chip cookies are fantastic. So you have to start selling these. So I started actually selling right before I had my son in February.
Okay.
And then postpartum, I got into a little bit of postpartum depression, but continuing to make the bread, like the process of making the bread itself, it's helped quite a bit.
Nice. So when you first started this, did you use any like bread starters? I know those are a thing for certain types of bread.
I started my own sourdough starter.
Nice.
And it was working, but not as well as I wanted it to.
Okay.
So I did end up purchasing a 31-year-old starter.
Oh,
so that's
cool.
what I've continued to feed since then, and that's what's still going now.
That's nice. That was something I remember reading about, was like there's some bread starters like maybe in Europe that are like hundreds of years old or whatever, and that's so cool. Like,
so basically what that is the cultures in the sourdough is what you continue to grow. So you feed it a little bit of flour and a little bit of water, and then it grows and it keeps that same culture that you continuously keep feeding. That's how you get a starter that's 31 years old or 100 years old.
so like how much attention does somebody have to pay to a starter? I guess that's another.
It depends on how much you bake with it.
Okay.
Mine, I feed at least every other day.
Wow.
And some people feed it every day, and it just depends. So at all given times, I have at least, I would say, a quart jar of starter in my fridge at all times. So that way, if something were to ever happen to the one that I have that sits out, I could pull it out and refeed it.
Okay.
Or if I need to leave for the week, then I feed it and I'll pop it in the fridge. And then when I come back after a couple days, it'll start to regrow once it comes back up to room temp.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Is that, so the starters, those are the things that are like, when they start to like re-knead it, it starts to bubble and shrink and kind of do all that. That's, it's alive. That's the whole point of the starter. Yeah. That's crazy. So what was the first thing you ever baked and sold? Let me ask you that.
That was the cookies.
Cookies, of course.
I use browned butter and sea salt, and that's what like really gives the sweet and salty flavor of it, and that's what really gets people hooked on it.
I didn't eat lunch yet. Might not have been a great idea to do this podcast without eating lunch first, but that's awesome. So, what did it feel like? Like making your first sale? Was it like a big like, oh wow, this is a thing I can do?
Yeah, I was like, man, I might be able to actually do this. This might be something that I actually enjoy.
That's so fun. So, what are the types of baked goods that you're best known for? I'm assuming bread because I saw a lot of bread on your Facebook page. So,
my traditional loaves are by far my best sellers because people like the authentic, traditional artisan flavor of a sourdough loaf.
Yeah. Non-sliced, I'm assuming. It's just one, just, okay. So, no sliced bread jokes here. We're just going to go right on the next one. So are there any signature items you have, or is there anything that you have that is specific that you're like, well, I kind of made this my own recipe or my own style or something like that? Is there like, maybe a recipe that you started with and you're like, I modified this to do this, it's
scones.
Scones.
Yep.
Okay.
I started with a recipe that I had found on Pinterest, and I've made a ton of modifications to it to specify it to what I know from the feedback from my customers to what I know that they like.
Okay. So is customer feedback like something big for you? Okay. So like, what are some of the customer feedback things that you've heard that you were just like, oh, I guess I never really thought about that ahead of time,
One thing was with like, I'd make sandwich loaves, and I have some older customers that are like, I really like the loaves, but I have such a hard time cutting them. Oh. Okay. So I do offer I'll slice the loaves for customers. That way it's a lot easier for them to just pop it out of the bread bag and just eat it like you would a regular sandwich.
Yeah. You don't use a machine, I'm assuming, to cut.
No.
So all this stuff seems like it's by hand or like, it's definitely something that you're putting all your love into. So, that was something the whole like sliced bread joke, yada, yada, yada. But I remember the first time I saw a bread slicer, I was like, this thing's insane. It's pretty wild. Did you ever work in a bakery before this?
No.
So this is all just organic, just pure love of the game here. How do you decide on what new products you're going to introduce? Like, is there like an experimental phase? You're like, oh, well, maybe we'll try something like this, and then we'll give it to the family and see if the family likes it, or give it to some neighbors, and then is there you just kind of
I recently just started pretzels and pretzel bites.
Cool.
And they're so good. I use social media a lot for it. Like I'll follow certain influencers and kind of get some ideas from them and stuff like that. So that way I know what to offer for my customers for season changes, basically.
Oh yeah.
Like I offered bread bowls at the beginning of soup season.
Nice.
So it's a community thing.
Yeah. Oh man, bread bowls. That's awesome. There's nothing better than like when you get done eating your meal and you look down, there's nothing else there, Oh, we did it. We ate it all. It's so good.
Right.
What makes your baked goods unique? I'm assuming a lot of it is just the fact that you're the one doing it. It's all by hand. It's not like machine stuff. It's not stuff you're shipping in and just being like, well, I baked it, but somebody else made, it's a lot of it's just you doing all this stuff.
Yeah. Like everything that I make is with sourdough. It has a sourdough culture. So it's been fermented for at least 12 to 24 hours. So that way you get the gut healthy benefits of it.
Okay.
Even the cookies, the scones, all of it.
So you have cookies that have some sourdough. That's wild.
Yep. Everything I make has a sourdough starter in it. So that way it ferments.
Now I want to try one of everything. Originally I was just like, man, maybe she'll bring some bread over, maybe, and then now it's like, well, I want some of the cookies. I want the scones. I want a sourdough pretzel, like hook me up with that. A sourdough bread bowl. That sounds so good. That sounds so good. How do you ensure the quality of the products? Is there like, do you source the ingredients in a specific way, or do you mix it in a certain way, or is it just the fact that you're the only one in the kitchen doing this?
I'm the only one in the kitchen that does it. And like my flour, I source all my flour locally. It is grown and milled in the state of Iowa, down in Panora, Iowa. Cool. Early morning harvest is where I get it.
That's cool. That's cool. Any other like super special ingredients you get from Iowa? Because I think those Iowa ties, bread, obviously, there's not a whole lot other than flour for the most part,
During the farmer's market season, I try to get a lot of it that way, like all of my blueberries or raspberries and strawberries. I try to locally source all of that anytime that I can.
That makes a lot of sense. It's probably easier to do that too. You can see the quality right there in front of you at a farmer's market. Where like
the farmer's market, you make so many customer connections and so many vendor connections that way.
Do you like sell your items at a farmer's market as well?
I did.
So you get to double dip.
Yep, I did all summer long at the farmer's market here in Fort Dodge.
Oh, cool. Right here in Fort Dodge.
Yeah.
That's sweet. Awesome. I'm assuming a lot of customer base, or is it something that is, as the year went on, it ramped up a little bit?
Yeah, it started off slow. And then, after probably the first couple weekends that I was there, everybody's like, oh my gosh, you got to go try out this sourdough lady. She's at the Fort Dodge farmer's market.
Did you ever miss a week and then have somebody be like, why weren't you here this week?
No, I never. I never missed a week because I knew that I would have customers that are like, what?
Yeah, that's so fun. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, my parents grew sweet corn, and that was something where we would like sell it on a street corner kind of deal.
Yeah.
We'd be there like every morning, and if we missed a morning, somebody would come by and they'd be like, you weren't here yesterday. I need 4 dozen, and it's like, why do you need 4 dozen? But at the same time, that's what'll happen.
Right.
You know it's going to happen. So it's pretty fun. I'm glad you're like, I think the consistency of showing up to those types of things is probably one of the best parts about, it's a nice way to market yourself to somebody. Just be like, I'm always going to be here. Do you have the same spot when you're at the farmer's market in town ever?
Most of the time. It changed every now and then, but most of the time I was in the same spot.
Easy to find.
Yeah.
Easy to
I
find.
always made sure that I was on the north side of where we were having it.
Is there a reason for that?
Just because that's where I started off. And so they had moved me to the south side of it once. Mm-hmm. And then I had customers that the next weekend came and they were like, well, you weren't here last week. And I'm like, I was, but they had moved me. So they didn't know where I was at.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I do a lot of vendor shows and stuff locally too.
Okay. So like what?
I've been out at the fairgrounds for the flea markets before.
Oh, cool.
And then when Lake City has their Western Days, those big events, I do those events too. And when they would double up on the weekends, I would go do one event and my husband would man the farmer's market.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do they recognize your husband then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He went with me pretty much every Saturday.
Nice. Well, good job. Good job. Way to go. So I guess I never really even thought about going to the other smaller towns. Maybe they don't have a farmer's market, but every town seems to have at least one of those little festival things. If they don't have a county fair, usually that's, oh, we got this weekend thing, or some of the smaller towns will do one once a month in the warmer seasons. We'll bring everybody in and do something. So that's a really good idea, to go do that. Did you find throughout the year that you kind of started expanding more and more and more a little bit further?
Yep.
Was that based on the fact that you took a chance once and you're like, this actually went pretty well.
Yes.
Let's try it out in a different town over here.
Yep. That's basically what it was.
Did anybody from any other towns recognize you from the Fort Dodge Farmers Market?
Yeah. I would go to a couple in Lake City, and then where else was one that I done? Jefferson. I had gone to one in Jefferson. Oh, do you do the one in Fort Dodge? I'm like, yep.
That's so fun. So what are some of the ways that customer feedback shaped your products or your process, or how you get the products to the customers? I know we had talked about a couple things where, maybe we might need to have this bread be sliced or something like that. Is there something we got free samples here, let's try this out, then you just kind of hear what people say? Or is it you come back the next week and somebody's like, I like this bread, I like that bread, the cookies, yes, do they have any sort of feedback that's maybe non-traditional that you would think of?
Not usually. Mm-hmm. Most of it was how they liked it, why they liked it. And then I would have some people be like, oh, well, have you ever tried this flavor? Are you going to try this flavor? Have you ever made this? Are you going to try to make this?
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess I never really even thought about that's a great point there, because customers can suggest things to you that you might not have even thought of,
right.
Or it's their preference, fall time, have you tried a pumpkin bread or something, something
right.
like that or whatever. Do you have anything that, I know how long have you been doing this? Let me ask you that.
I have been selling for a year.
A year. So you've only gone through all the seasons once.
Yes.
Do you have any ideas for next season, next year for the seasons? I missed it this fall, but next fall I'm definitely going to do XYZ. Like pumpkin was the one I just kind of mentioned.
I did a lot of pumpkin scones and pumpkin bread and bars and stuff like that. But there was a couple things as far with the apple that I'm like, oh, I should have tried that. I saw a lot of people make pumpkin shaved loaves. I never even attempted it this year because I had made a rabbit one last year for Easter. If you can find it on my Facebook page. I'm
gonna go look it up.
It was a rabbit shaped loaf of bread and it was really cute, but with all the stuff that I had going on around the Thanksgiving time, I just did not have time to even attempt to try to make the pumpkin loaf. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely something I want to try. I like trial and erroring the different flavors and the different styles and the different shapes because I think it's neat. Yeah,
I never even really would have thought about trying to shape the bread like something, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff, as I understand, is somewhat of like a home bakery, correct?
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of the stuff in your home, or do you have like a space that you go to just outside of your home? Or
I do everything in my home.
All right.
I have 2 additional fridges in a bedroom adjacent to my kitchen. It's an old, we just use it as a computer room now, but I have 2 fridges designated for my bread in there. Because so I mix the bread I do stretch and folds every half an hour for the first 2 hours.
Gee.
And then I let it bulk ferment because I do about 10 loaves at a time per bin that I do. And I do usually 30 to 40 loaves a day.
Gee.
And so when I do that, I have to let the bread rise for at least 6 hours. And so then it goes into the fridge for a cold ferment. And that's where you get the fermentation process that aids with the digestion of the bread.
Okay. That's wild. I guess I never really even thought about how long this would actually take.
It's from start to finish. It's a 3-day process for a loaf of bread.
Wow. I mean, and it's not something that you can just be like, well, before I go to bed, I'm just going to do this. And then we'll just the next day repeat the process. Yeah. This is something that you have to like tend to, it seems like,
it is.
Throughout the day. And then the only time I think you would get to rest is when it's fermenting in the fridge. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Jeez, it's almost like having a kid.
Yeah, and I've got 2 of those, 2 little ones at home, and then we've got a 17-year-old at home too, and they all definitely keep us on our toes.
Yeah, so you've had some practice with tending to things on a daily basis. So what have been some of the biggest challenges, I guess? Does it come with having a home bakery, or maybe even the challenges you've had going to farmers markets and things like that?
The home bakery side of it took me a long time to get into like a routine and a schedule to figure out time-wise how I was going to manage it all with a newborn at home.
Oh yeah.
And once I got into that rhythm, it was easy. And having my husband helps with like when we would do the farmers markets, I would be baking or shaping or doing something, and I'd be like, "Hey, can you put labels on all the bread bags?" So I'd get them all printed out, and he's just in there like a machine, just throwing labels on all the bags.
I love how you're just like, yeah, we got it all figured out. And, it took me a while to kind of figure out a process, but like, this is very much more labor intensive than I thought it was going to be. It's bread, we'll mix some stuff together. We'll just kind of see, just throw it in the bake. I guess maybe I just never made bread, so I don't really know. The only experience I've ever had is like with a bread maker. Yeah. And those are they do it all.
And that's how I started. When I was a teenager, my parents worked full time. Mm-hmm. So if we wanted fresh bread, my mom had one of those generic bread makers, and then she had the box of the quick bread mix, and you just threw it in, and in a couple hours you had a loaf of bread.
Yeah. I remember doing that with my mom when I was younger. It was basically like you put the ingredients in and you kind of set it in there a certain way, throw some water in there, and it basically does the rest.
It's the whole thing.
And it's, it's not bad, but I will say, like, I have had on a couple occasions handmade bread, and for some reason it tastes better. Is there a reason for that?
It's because less ingredients, to be honest. With a traditional loaf of regular bread or sourdough bread, it's basic ingredients. It's flour, water, and salt. Yeah. With everything else, all the stuff that you buy at the store, there's all kinds of additives and preservatives and stuff to keep it fresher longer. Bread's not supposed to last a month. That's true. Yeah, it's not supposed to be able to sit on the shelf and be soft the whole time. No. I guess that's another thing I never even thought about. All that stuff affects the flavor of it. And that's why sourdough bread and regular bread in general it's so much healthier for you.
That also makes me think, like, there's been like flour arguments where like, oh, enriched flour is not as good as blah, or whatever. So that's probably also plays into it too. Yes. The different types of flour that you would end up using.
With sourdough, you don't ever want to use bleached flour ever.
Is there a reason?
It makes it rancid.
That's wild. I guess that's the other thing. Trial and error. That might be like one of the other challenges that you would have had to face. Cause like, it's not like you worked in a bakery and had like, you have an industrial kitchen to work with and all this other stuff. You have to, figure out, like you said, the time frame I need to do things. Plus you're balancing family life with all of this. And then you need to figure out like, well, how are we going to do the labels? You had to figure everything out. The bagging, the bread. Oh, somebody wants it sliced. How am I going to do this? And it's all, you're doing it all. It's wild. So like, how do you balance all of that with your family life? Let me ask you that.
The good thing about it is working from home. I'm at home with my kids, so I'm there when they need me, and I'm still able to produce quality bread.
That's really nice.
If, my son is 11 months old now. And so if he's super needy, needs my attention, then I'll just throw him on my back in a baby carrier while I'm baking bread or running around the kitchen and doing what I need to do.
That's fun. That's so much fun. So what's like maybe the most rewarding part of all of this for you? Like you might have just mentioned it. You get to work from home.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
That part of it is really rewarding for me. And, I'm accessible to my kids whenever they need me. Mm-hmm. And another thing is knowing that I can provide fresh, wholesome bread to the community. Yeah. There's no extra things in it. There's no additives. It's fresh and it's homemade and it's good for you.
Did I see that you at one point in time had some of your bread in stores for sale even?
Yeah, I do. Right. Currently I have it for sale in the Manson grocery store.
Cool. That's awesome. So maybe we'll be making a trip over to Manson after work here today. You never know.
We're working on a couple different other local grocery stores, but that's the solid one right now.
How did that get started? Did somebody suggest it to you? Or you were
actually, someone on the board reached out to me. Someone on the board is married to my daughter's preschool teacher.
Is that somebody on the board at the grocery
yes.
store?
Yep.
Is that like a co-op over there or something like that?
It's a community owned, yeah.
Okay, all right. That's really cool. I love that those smaller towns still, some of those ones that still have grocery stores, they still flourish,
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess if you go over to Manson, if you don't want to drive to Fort Dodge, there's really nowhere. Rockwell City might be
Rockwell City has a fairway now.
Yeah, so that'd be like the only other place you could go. Mm-hmm. And they're still both a jaunt,
Yeah.
So that's really awesome that you're able to supply it in the Manson area. So if you're from Fort Dodge, you want to try some bread, swing over to Manson and get some of that bread over there. Cause I honestly might just swing over there after work. You never know. How late are they open?
I think they're open till 8.
All right. I'm in. So how do you promote your bakery? How do you connect with the new customers? Was it first at the farmers markets?
Yeah.
And how do you go from there?
A lot of it is word of mouth along with marketing. When it comes to baked goods, word of mouth is key.
Oh yeah.
So when I would do farmers markets, everything that I did not sell at the farmers market got donated to the community. It got donated to the hospital, doctor's offices, the police department, the fire department. I took it wherever it could go where I knew it would get eaten.
That makes a lot of sense because you mentioned earlier, the bread's not going to last a month on the shelf like it would with the other bread. I noticed you also have a Facebook page. I'm going to link to that down below for sure. But has that helped you out at all? Has there been anybody that's reached out?
Yeah. That's where I originally started it, along with just doing family and friends. Mm-hmm. And then as I went through this farmers market season, my Facebook page just grew and grew and grew, meeting new people and new vendors. They're like, hey, you got to try out this sourdough bread. And I have a couple of customers that don't even live anywhere near me, but every time they have the opportunity to buy bread from me, they're there to get it.
That's wild. That's so crazy. So have you ever this is maybe a little off topic and not on the little list of questions I had to ask. Have you ever joined up with another farmer's market person? I feel like that'd be weird if you could find somebody that's well, we make honey and you make bread and mix them together. Now you got, you can make honey toast at the farmer's market or something like that.
I've promoted other farmer's market vendors like that. There was Homestead. I can't remember the exact name, but they were at the farmer's market and they had peach jam. Oh. And peach jam on one of my blueberry lemon loaves was phenomenal.
Get out of here.
It was delicious.
That sounds so good. Again, I did not eat before this and I'm very much regretting it. That's crazy. So connecting with new customers is always a good thing. Word of mouth. I think a lot of people forget that as a marketing tactic. You know, it seems to be when things are starting out, sometimes the best way to get the ball rolling, and especially with something as organic as this, where you're going to farmers markets, I can just, like I said, I can just see people trying some of your bread and walking 2 booths down and just being oh my gosh, you got to try this. And then just turning back and being all right, I need one.
There would be plenty of people. You'd see them walking around the farmer's market, just tearing off a piece of the bread and just eating it as they're walking around shopping.
That's so good. Especially with fresh bread. It's so easy to do that. I don't know if I would ever want to do that with a bread I bought off the shelf. I can only ever recall a couple times, I was at a French bakery once and I got a French baguette or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's that's one of the only times in my life I've ever just pulled a loaf of bread apart and eaten it because they made it that day, you know? And that's I don't know, just eating warm bread. There's nothing better than that. It's just sounds so good. So social media helping you grow your business. You have a Facebook. Do you have an Instagram or anything else?
I have Instagram and TikTok. I have not used those quite as much as the Facebook. I've just gotten into doing the TikTok videos and stuff like that. So I'm still integrating that into part of my promotion. Nice.
I'll have to make sure I put those in the description as well. I'll get those from you before we end up here finishing it off today. But how are some other ways that you connect with new customers? I mean, we mentioned farmers markets, we mentioned social media. Do you ever have like people, like, I don't want to say like just introduce new customers to you? Like, have you ever had like a family member just be like, oh, my neighbor Steve had a pint of that, but now he wants some, or
yeah, my parents do a lot for me too, as far as promotion, like, because they live in town.
Okay.
And so all their friend groups are like, man, my daughter makes these really good cookies or these really good scones. My dad loves the blueberry lemon scones. He gets them every week.
What are some future goals you have? Do you have any like expansion plans? Do you have anything
end goal games? I would love to have a storefront bakery.
Ooh.
That would be ideal for me.
Yeah. It seems like it used to be every town had a bakery.
Yeah, right.
And now
there used to be one in town a long time ago.
I guess I don't remember that. I'm from Humboldt, so but there was a bakery in Humboldt as well.
Yeah,
too,
right.
So, but yeah, I remember when that disappeared, it was kind of bittersweet. It's like one of those things like, well, I mean, you still have like the big box store with its own bakery in there, but at the same time, it's not the same.
Home baking, as far as pastries and bread and stuff like that, is kind of a lost art.
I would agree.
It's all coming back more now than ever.
I would agree 100%. Because I mean, I feel like that's something. I don't want to say that like the pandemic had something to do with it, but when everyone was like stuck at home, everybody tried picking up these new hobbies, know, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, now this town has a craft beer maker, and this town has their own bakery, and this town, like there's people that kind of just figure out that these things are more than just like goofy hobbies you can have, or just something that, oh, I just make bread out of necessity because it's easier than whatever, cheaper than going to the store or something like that, and now it's like, I don't know. I feel like there's a resurgence of a lot of these kinds of, like I said, I don't want to say side jobs or like side hustles, where people are turning them into back in. It's almost like the community's reverting back to like the way it used to be. I mean, even in town here, there's a lot of, you get the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, like a lot of those types of things. There's actually like a lot of those starting to pop up in the Fort Dodge area now, and all the other small towns. So do you think it's attainable next year to get a storefront, or are we still in a growing process?
I think it's definitely attainable.
Ooh. So if you had a dream location, is it in Fort Dodge, or is it in one of the smaller towns?
Fort Dodge would be ideal.
Yeah.
Just because it's more centrally located.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I guess, bigger clientele base, 20-some thousand people. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Plus, like I said, I'm from Humboldt. I'm in Fort Dodge all the time. I work here. I come shopping here, not that there's nothing to do in Humboldt, but there's plenty to do in Fort Dodge. Right. So what if somebody like wanted to start baking today? They heard this podcast and they're like, man, I kind of want to start baking. Do you have like a piece of advice you would give to somebody that's starting out for the first time?
Just do it. You got to just try it.
So
I was super nervous about man, is this even going to be something that's worth my time? Is this going to be worth doing or pursuing? And it absolutely was. Had I not had the push from all my family and friends being like, you need to do this, I wouldn't have.
So like, what happens if somebody, like, I'm just throwing this out there as an example. What if they make a loaf of bread and it didn't turn out very good? What's the advice you would give them?
Try again.
Try again.
It took me months to get a successful loaf of bread.
Oh, wow.
Just because it's such a trial and error process, because you don't know it. Letting a sourdough loaf ferment on the counter is totally dependent on your home environment. Everybody's home environment is different. So my house could be at 52% humidity with 68 degrees, and somebody else's house is 72 degrees with 70-degree humidity. That's going to proof bread differently than my house.
I didn't even think of that.
It's insane.
Again, this is another reason I like this podcast, because I come in here like, well, I did some research on bread. I'm pretty good on this. We'll see what we got going on. And then it's like, I never even thought of the humidity and the temperature.
Yeah.
That makes me think, like, if you're sitting it on the counter and sunlight hits it, maybe it's going to change it differently or something. Does. That's crazy. So how have you found ways to make this consistent in your own home then, using your own process?
Yes.
Where it's like, okay.
So in the wintertime, I have to feed my starter with warm water instead of cold water like I would in the summertime. And then when I am proofing it, I don't mind keeping it in I have a table that's by a south facing window. I don't mind having it on that table, because then I get the appropriate amount of warmth, because I keep my house at 69 degrees because I get too freaking hot during the day. But
well, you're baking all day.
I put them in a south facing window, and that works for my process. But in the summertime, it's nowhere near that window. It's on the opposite side of the house, because otherwise my bread's going to proof in 3 hours versus 6 hours.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. maybe this is a little late in the game to be asking this. Proof? What's proofing?
The rise on it.
Okay. All
so
right.
like the bread, I only let it rise for 6 hours versus my cinnamon rolls or bagels that go for 8 to 12 hours. My bread has such a high concentrated amount of starter in it that the more starter you have, the faster it's going to come to its peak.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's wild. I remember like when I was like looking stuff up this morning, I was looking up like a different, I was going to bring a list in here of like interesting bread facts you might not have known or whatever, but I didn't print any of them off. The one I do remember that I thought was pretty fun was, again, sorry, it's a little off topic, but it was, the inside of the bread. Do you know what? So you have like the crust on the outside. Do you know what the inside, they used to call it the crumb? And that's where the term crumbs comes from. Yep. I had no clue.
Yeah. So when I was first starting out, like I'm in a ton of Facebook groups for beginning sourdough and stuff like that. And I had taken a picture, I had cut my loaf in half and I'm like, man, I don't know if I like that. So I took a picture of it and I'm like, hey, can anybody give me a read on my crumb? Because they can tell, like people can tell by looking at a picture how over, under, or perfectly proofed a loaf of bread is.
That's well, I guess again, if you do it enough, you get good at it. But that's it just seems crazy to me. But it's at the same time, it's no different than appraising something. If someone's an appraiser, you know, like they just have an area of expertise and they see something they can tell you. That's really crazy. That also like makes me think, has networking helped you? Like you talked about, I go online, I get in these groups and then I can bounce ideas off of people. Or
it has. I can't even tell you how many different chat groups I'm in with people. Just like right now for Valentine's Day, everybody's getting their Valentine's Day menus all finalized. So that way they can put those out and get orders going for that.
So if somebody wants to make an order, can they make an order online?
Yeah, I have. So if, you want something specific, you can just message my Facebook page and we can get it done that way. Otherwise, Saturday through Wednesday, I have an ordering window that's open and people can, it's on Simply Bread Oven app, which is linked in my profile. And people can go in there and whatever's on the menu, you can just add it to your cart and then check out that way. And then you can either pick up at my house outside Rockwell City, or I have a drop location here in town at Smitty's Lawn Care.
Cool. I'm going to put a link to that down below as well. I know people will go to the Facebook, they'll click like, and they'll see the link because I saw it there on your Facebook page. But if push comes to shove, someone doesn't have social media, I'm just going to put the link right there for somebody to buy some bread, because that just sounds awesome. It's so cool that you found ways to innovate. It's like, well, if there's no farmers markets, how's somebody going to buy bread? Well, we'll just sell it online, you know?
Right.
And then you found out like, this is the proper window if I want the bread to be done. Cause you said sometimes it takes a couple days, you know, this will give me the time to get it done for the weekend, to deliver it, or et cetera, et cetera. Is that something that you also kind of had to trial and error going through?
Trying to figure out a schedule of what day works best for pickup for everybody, what days I'm available to be able to drop off for everybody, and my time frame for actually making the bread.
Yeah. I mean, plus again, you make it sound so easy balancing this out with having a family, but like, yeah, I don't know.
I would not be able to do it without my husband's help. That's for sure. Because with him, you know, if I got stuff going on, he helps manage the kids when he's home. And then if he is home, he can help me put label on things and get things ready to get him out the door.
I'm sure he's the taste tester as well.
Oh, absolutely.
This makes me think like, for some reason, this made me think, have you ever made your own butter?
I haven't. I've been looking into it because I'm one of those, I want to get a milk cow. I want to do all of
You want to go from scratch.
I want to do all of the things. And I've been looking more and more into getting raw milk locally and making my own butter and making my own creams. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet.
Yeah. Because I mean, that butter,
fresh bread and fresh butter, man.
It goes hand in hand.
Perfect.
I have made my own butter, not from scratch. Not from scratch. I do want to preface that heavily, but it is possible to make butter. I remember when we were in school, we had like a Little House on the Prairie kind of segment in school, and they were like, oh, let's try and do some of the stuff like they did in Little House on the Prairie, and they showed us how to make butter out of some heavy cream. You know, and that was something that I did, and that's something for a long time on the holidays. It was like, well, that's my contribution to the meal. Everyone's going to make all their crazy stuff, and I'm just going to make fresh butter. You know, it's like it's not very much to add to it, but at the same time, when you put fresh butter on a fresh roll, you notice it. Yeah, and that makes me think, if you had like your own cow and your own starter, it's like how much better would it taste? You know, because like I said, I'm just getting mass-produced stuff, mass-produced things for bread, mass-produced you know, cream for making my own butter, but That's fun. Do you have any other ideas other than like getting your own cow and letting it roam around Rockwell?
I'd like to get more chickens. So that way, I mean, we have 30 chickens now, but right now with the winter times, they're not laying like we want them to. I would love to be able to fully use just farm fresh eggs for all of my products.
That's so fun. Well, I have a family. Oh yeah, I have a bread business. I have 30 chickens. Like,
I used to have more, but
that's wild. Oh, this might sound weird. Do the chickens ever eat the bread?
yes, they do.
I was gonna say a lot.
When I have loaves that go bad in the house, I just toss it out the yard, and the chickens, they love it, and it's good for them.
Yeah, I remember I knew somebody that had chickens, and they said, yeah, I mean, if we have leftovers, we just kind of throw it out to the chickens, and they eat most of it, you know.
I have a miniature pony and a potbelly pig that also.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So are we talking like next you're gonna be like selling bacon or something, or like what are we?
No.
Okay.
The potbelly pig, she was a gift for my daughter, and she loved her, and now she's over it. So
okay.
She's just a little farm pig now.
That's fun. That's so much fun. What a life that would be. All right, so we talked a little bit about marketing. Like there's things we mentioned, word of mouth, you've done social media, you go to farmers markets, you go to groups online and network yourself with other people. You've talked to other people that are selling at those farmers markets and things like that. Maybe get some of their jelly or their jams and slide it in on top of some of your bread and let people try it. Get the best of both worlds, you know, that networking. So is there a time in your life where like you've like been marketed to, or you've interacted with some marketing and you didn't even know that you were getting marketed to until like afterwards? A lot of times, like with this question, I think about like all the times somebody's marketed to me and I'm like, I don't really want any of this stuff. And then after a while you're like, you know, actually I do want some of that. And you try it. It's like, well, the marketing actually worked there and I didn't realize it did until afterwards.
The flour that I started using was marketed to me I was actually at a vendor show.
Okay.
And a gal had come in and she had bought a loaf of bread, and then she circled back. She's like, she gave me all the information about it, and she's like, get a hold of these guys. They make the flour that's local, and they grow it here in Iowa. They grind it here in Iowa. Everything's done here in the state of Iowa.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's all organic.
It's so fun that somebody came through and they're like, this is good. You should try this and see what happens.
And honestly, the difference it has made in my bread is day and night.
That's wild.
The texture of my bread is so much better. The color so much better. The flavor is better because it's not enriched. It's not bleached. It's all organic. There's nothing. It's just ground wheat berries.
That makes me, so I'm an accountant, obviously, like that's what I went to school for. That's one of the things I do here, but it's like, it makes me think, is there a large cost between some like maybe more organic-ish bread or more organic like wheat than like just getting some off the shelf? Is there like a huge cost difference?
It depends on where you get it. If I were to go to Walmart and buy an organic 5-pound bag of flour versus the Walmart Great Value brand, there's a significant cost difference. But buying it wholesale the way that I do, it's not much more for me. It's not. Okay. It's amazing. It's not that much more for me. Even if it were, I'd be glad to spend
still be going that route.
Absolutely.
That's another thing. I guess I never even thought about that. You had to test all that stuff out too, where it's like, well, now I want to try some more organic bread or some unbleached or non-enriched flour, you know? So like you go out and you're like, I got to go find some and buy some and try it. Or at least you had somebody that, you know, had stopped you and said, you should try this.
They're like, hey, we can drop off samples for you. And they did. And it worked out perfect.
That's so fun. That's so fun. And that's another thing that's like, sometimes as a business, like this proves that like marketing can like, somebody could market to you and it can come out to your benefit in the long run, even, you know? So just business to business marketing is something I think a lot of us forget when we think about marketing. I mean, obviously this is a marketing podcast, but it's one of those things we always think about. I want to market to the customer, you know, but like you could network with somebody and market to them, you know, maybe you're not trying to sell them something, but you could just be like, you should try this and see what you think of it, you know? And that's such a beautiful thing there. So I do want to say one more time, this is Country Oven Home Bakery. There's going to be links down below to a Facebook, an Instagram, a TikTok, and that order link is also going to be down there below as well. And Shanelle, thank you very much for coming and talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So are you this is the last, we're going to go out on this. Are you planning on farmers marketing next year? Because they don't do them in the winter time here in Fort Dodge, do they? No,
they don't.
Okay, so do you know about when the farmers markets start up? So if people are...
I think they start at the beginning of June.
All right, beginning of June. If you can't wait until then, go to the Facebook, check it out, look at those awesome pictures of bread, and then click that order link, because that's where it's at. So thank you very much for sitting down talking with us today, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yep. This podcast is produced by Spin Market and Digital. Located in Fort Dodge, Iowa, Spin Market's highly skilled team can help you increase your market by updating your website, improving SEO, designing advertisements, and producing podcasts that will grab the attention of your market. Contact Spin Market today for all your digital marketing needs at Digital Agent at spinmarket.com or call us at 515-302-8026. And to learn more, visit our website at www.spinmarket.com. That's Digital Agent at spinmarket.com or 515-302-8026. Or visit our website at www.spinmarket.com.